All right, I will call to order the Board of Supervisors Solid Waste Committee meeting Tuesday, September 29th, 2020. Actually 4:08 p.m. As the prior meeting ran over slightly. We are located in the Chatham Community Center, 115 South Main Street, Chatham. Roll call, please.
Mr. Warren.
Here.
Mr. Davis.
Present.
Mr. Dudley.
Present.
Are there items to be added to the agenda? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion we approve the agenda as presented in the package. Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're gonna move on. Please remember that the committee meeting is designed for an internal committee and county staff communication, discussion, and work. It is not a question and answer session with the audience. Accordingly, during the committee meeting, no questions or comments from the audience will be entertained. Respectfully, any outburst or disorderly conduct from the audience will not be tolerated and may result in the offending person's removal from the committee meeting. As a reminder, all county citizens and other appropriate parties as designated by the board's bylaws are permitted to make comments under the hearing of the citizen section of future business meetings. You actually have one. New business, item 1A, new convenience center update. Ryan Duckett.
You know, we got 3 convenience centers we're working on, and I've had a lot of questions about timeline. We've got a presentation this evening from Mr. Duckett, who was from SES Engineers. He provided an update on the sites.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks to the committee for allowing me to speak tonight to update you all on our work with the convenience center projects. There's specifically 3 going on. Next slide. Yeah, it's gonna be a different one. Yeah, no problem. I can go ahead and get started. I'll quickly talk about our preliminary work that we did around a year and a half ago with the existing system. We basically did kind of an inventory and overall conceptual look at the system of compactor sites, green boxes, open top containers, and similar facilities within the county, including the landfill, which is located in Hartford. Building on that conceptual report, we eventually kind of created a framework to try to improve the system, specifically by eliminating green box sites where possible, and overall, eventually. The green box sites, if you don't know, are basically roadside dumpsters. They're unmonitored, unsupervised waste and recycling collection centers without any sort of additional offerings, and they tend to produce a host of problems wherever they are, including things like pests, and lack of supervision leads to outside citizens using them sometimes, for businesses as free disposal, and overall they just aren't a sustainable system. So we created the concept of not just calling any new collection centers compactor sites, but differentiating them between regional and neighborhood sites, with neighborhood sites pretty much being status quo compactor sites, and the idea of a regional site, of which there'd only be maybe 2 or 3 in the county, would probably offer a little bit more in addition to the standard compactor, bulky waste, and occasionally different recycling streams. They would offer the comprehensive recycling options in the county and have multiple open tops for bulky and as well as MSW collection and perhaps other things as well. I've got the slides, but I can just talk through it. The first slide I had was a snapshot of the north part of the county with the existing sites, and then what we had designed is radii to indicate service areas of the existing sites and potential new sites. And if you have the board packet, you can check it out. It's basically a couple new neighborhood sites in the northern part of the county and a new regional site as well. And those are the three convenience centers that we've been working on to do the actual design and permitting process for. What do I mean by the permitting process and design process? So a quick summary. Here we go. Yeah, if you go to the presentation, you
No, that's my slide. I'm the third presentation.
yeah, that's fine. If people can do it with more packets. I can just talk to her. I don't want to hold you guys up. All right. So what do I mean by design and permitting process for these convenience center sites? Within our scope of work that we've been doing this year, we started out by doing a siting effort last year and then melding into site plan development. And it's kind of a little bit here, a little bit there process of working with various groups, and those primary groups being the county, the engineering team, VDOT to site the commercial entrance for the sites. And for at least one of the sites, we'll have to be working with VDQ on stormwater and ESC plans work. So right now we're at about 75% design or so for all three across the board. Some a little bit more than others as various issues have come up. But so far all of the preliminary site plans have been reviewed by VDOT representatives, and we think they're all going to go through with approval ultimately down the line. And so that's the main design criteria for these things in terms of what external agencies are looking at. We also have to abide by the regulations of the Virginia Stormwater Management Program. So we've been working through, specifically on the regional site, which is larger than the others, a lot of stormwater BMPs and other features necessary to meet the programs of the Virginia Stormwater Management. And after we nail down the final designs and we get final VDOT approval and for the Meadow Ridge regional site, the state's approval of our stormwater plan will be moving on to final construction bid package development. The final little task that we did today was a geotechnical investigation for the large site as it's moving a lot of dirt, and we did that as a risk minimization effort to make sure the cuts we were making weren't going to reveal anything below the surface that might hold up the project. We've got some preliminary draft site layouts within the board packet. The three sites are level run roads.
Show them to them.
Well, I would love to.
Oh, it won't be
Yeah, that's fine.
Scroll down.
Yeah, I mean, got some pictures. ahead.
Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
He's got this.
Right there.
Oh.
Right there.
It was on this line.
It's not in a presentation.
Yeah, it's still in scroll mode. But these are the three sites, draft layouts, the Level Run Road, Climax Road, and what we're calling Meadow Ridge Court. That's the regional site. So that's the larger one that has taken the most effort so far. We gotta scroll to the next slide. The status as far as VDOT has reviewed preliminary draft designs for the three sites. The sites have different layouts. So the Meadow Ridge Court regional site has a segregated entrance and exit with a throughway traffic. And that would be for both users of the site as well as servicing containers once they're full. And that's segregated within the site. Level Run Climax Road design is loops. No sites based on turn warrant analysis were anticipated to require addition to the VDOT highway, turn lanes and tapers. Yes.
So that was the question. So on the Meadow Ridge, off of 29 onto Bel Air, they don't expect a turn lane on 29 north? 29, there's Bel Air.
Yep.
29 right here. There's no turning off to the right to get into that Bel Air road. It'd be 65 mile an hour to whatever speed you want to turn in.
There is a taper there now, and there's one on Belair Road which you can access the site from the opposite end.
That's right. And I think our larger trucks are gonna have to do that. That's an extremely tight turn.
We did talk about that today. I had a site visit with
You
them.
did one there? Yeah. Yeah, like right out here. 65 to 0. But so that was brought up today?
Yeah, so that being outside of the actual entrance, it would have to be a separate effort to do anything like that. But because the commercial truck traffic, big turning radius trucks are within the county's control, we felt like they could be directed onto Bel Air if they're going to make that right turn. Because we did feel the right turn onto the bottom part of Bel Air is a little bit too tight for the road trucks.
I agree.
So they'll be directed up there. So I was going through where we are on VDOT. The Climax Road site is anticipated to go through, no issues there. Level Run Road, I was out on the site today working with VDOT to assess the site distance from the proposed entrance. And it's looking like it might require an easement for cutting off some limbs at one time that are hanging over the Straight-Stern Creek Bridge that are the only thing impeding us getting the distance we need on that. So it was explained to me that if the county is able to work with the owner of the easement, whoever's in charge of that property, they would be able to trim the limbs without any sort of disturbance of the soil and get about 8 feet of additional viewing range on the turn there to be able to meet the distance requirement. That would be able to get the approval.
Yeah, that's the one coming off Level Run. Yeah, he's saying, I guess the adjacent property owner has some overhanging trees or something.
The property owner across the road.
Mhm.
This is not in my district, but the Level Run Road,
I've got questions on
is
this.
that site big enough to add a compactor or something later in the event? Is that growth up there?
You can put one on the outside, the perimeter of the site. It's
Okay.
currently designed as just a basic loop with a compactor in the middle. So citizens can loop around it and a bulky container in the corner, a recycling container in the other.
Well, I guess my question really is, when we doing these designs, are we thinking about more than right now? We need possibility of some expansion if it comes up.
Yeah, certainly, we didn't crowd them, so such that, you know, as I've observed in the whole system as it exists, things have been added to the perimeter over time, and it seems to be working out. So there's enough room and buffer around that level run site. On the Climax Road site, there's room for a couple that I've already discussed with Richard a little bit. And then Meadow Ridge, that was our whole design, was to make sure to allow for expansion of that in the long run, because that being a regional site, first regional site offering other services such as, who knows, yard waste collection or a Goodwill drop off in the future, that one will need the most space for flexibility in the future, depending on growth or just the addition of services. Now this level run site is so remote that it would be tough to try to add additional services and account for growth both. But at the end of the day, we basically try to incorporate enough queuing distance as people are turning off to get up into the site and go around the compactor to allow for some buffer. And another way you can create buffer is to attend the site with a site attendant and service it more increasingly, because that seems to be something that, you know, these remote sites rely on, is occasional servicing. So
What's the time frame on the level of, as far as when it'll be in complete?
Well, all of that is predicated on available funding, and I think Mr. Hicks is somewhat prepared to speak about that. We'd love to build them all three at once for economies of scale. I haven't heard a price estimate on all these three combined, but I'm pretty positive that as of today, we don't have that money. Do you have a price estimate?
no, not really
Can it
finalized.
be
So
done
we
by
haven't got
December
something
31st?
No. That gotta be done before you run production.
You think so?
That's 2.5 years.
Yeah, mine's a little sooner, and I sure will. So,
Believe me, I've been getting calls on mine, I can tell you that. Somebody wants to know about the land. Just don't.
So the last pre-construction item that's ongoing is meeting the requirements of the Virginia Stormwater Management Program. I won't go too technical on this, but essentially you have to look at your existing site conditions and then the future conditions once the actual facility is implemented. And you have to meet certain erosion and sediment control during construction. And in the long run, you have to meet stormwater rules that require the quantity of runoff to equal or be less than after you build as it was before. And so we've been working through, especially on the Meadow Ridge site, given the large paved area, and it's going to be reviewed by DEQ as well as county staff. There's going to be a lot of eyes on it, and we've got multiple features designed into that I'll get into right here. That's the site, and you can see that the site that requires a pretty good sized stormwater ponds. We got a dry swale and a wraparound ditch around the backside. So those items are kind of unique to this larger site, which is well over an acre of disturbance. It's about an acre and a half of impervious area when you combine the gravel and paved area. So work items outstanding include the final external agency approvals once we do have a stamped final design for each. Integrating, prior to that, integrating more specialized structural and electrical designs as needed. Compilation of construction design packages and bid forms for issuance to potential bidders, and it seems like you might want to do them all at once, which should make things a little bit more streamlined. But we'll work with y'all on that to make whatever revision is as far as issuance, whether they're all at once or two at the same time or all separate. Then once you get building, after selecting the contractor, the administration and quality assurance of the design that he's built as designed. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. We're down to 5B, landfill expansion.
Now, Mr. Joyce, here this evening with, engineer who's doing our landfill work. And I've got copies of his
Hello, how are you all?
Hey, Butch.
Hey, how you doing? Do you all have, I had a couple of slides. Yeah, there you go. That's it. Okay. All right, good. So I can set this aside now. This works. Good, okay. Great. Thank you for giving me a few minutes this afternoon. What I wanted to do is give the board, Richard asked me to give the board kind of an update on what's going on at the landfill. Y'all probably been talking about it. So I wanted to kind of give you some boots on the ground, kind of looks at what's going on there and what you all can expect. So the first slide, and I've broken this into two areas. I call the first one the operations update. In other words, what's going on there at the landfill, the improvements that have been made. I think we've had a lot of significant accomplishments since in the last 2 years, since July 2018. And I wanted to review those with you. And then the second one, I'll talk about the expansion and that project. Okay? So the first one, just a couple of notes about some of the changes and improvements and accomplishments in the last couple of years. The first one I note there is that the annual tonnage out there at the landfill, we're projecting this year from 19 to 20, last year to this year, about a 35% increase in tonnage at the landfill. So that's pretty significant for a site this size. So that's good. And that tonnage is primarily coming from the contract that you all had with the base transportation coming out of it, as well as some additional tonnages coming from the county here. So, but that's a good thing because hopefully you're realizing some additional revenue from that additional tonnage. The second point is compaction density. One of the things that we told David and Richard when we came on board here is that we wanted to demonstrate how we can improve the life of your landfill. And the main way we improve the life of your landfill is you improve how much waste you put in there, the density, the compaction that we get out there. So we have seen an increase of about 37.5%, 38% of compaction, and those numbers specifically, when we came on board in 2018, the number was running around 1,000 pounds, 1,000 to 1,100 pounds per cubic yard density. Right now, we've averaged over the last measurements over 1,400 pounds per cubic yard. Okay, so again, that's about a 38% increase. Now, what's our target and what's a good target for an industry standard? 1,500 pounds is the target that we want to get to. All right, so that says for every cubic yard of airspace, 3 by 3 by 3, we get 1,500 pounds, or 3/4 of a ton is what we get in that 3 by 3 by 3. That's what we're after. Right now, we're getting almost 3/4 of a ton. We get over 1,400, and that's a very good thing. And what that means to you all is that means that extends the life of that capital investment, that money that you spent. It prolongs the life of the landfill, okay? And it also, you generate more revenue per cubic yard or per square foot of landfill space, okay? And stop me anytime and ask me any questions. Third bullet point is fill progression is orderly. We have eliminated all standing water. We've got the site in a shape where there's proper drainage going on the site. We've got this in the shape that's covered. We have a fill progression plan so that Ronald and his staff can manage drainage off the site, and so that we can get trucks in and out quickly. That's key to a good operation. It's good access roads and getting trucks in and out quickly. So we have that, and the other part of that is not just short-term, but long-term. We had a meeting out this morning. Chris was there with us, and we've got a filling plan, a fill progression. How are we going to fill up that space literally for the next 24 to 36 months now. So, and Ronald and I meet 3 to 4 times a year. We walk over the site, we talk about that fill progression, and we agree on this is the best way, this is the most efficient way to use this space. So that's a very positive thing that is happening. DEQ inspections, in the last couple of years, to my knowledge, there have been no notice of violations. There's been a couple of warnings issued, but those are minor things that Ronald corrected quickly. And so you're in good shape in terms of DEQ, the regulatory inspections. One of the major permit modifications that is out for public comment right now is to increase your permitted tonnage. Right now, your permit says you can only take 200 tons a day. We went ahead and made that up to 1,000 tons a day. So it gives us a lot of flexibility to generate additional tonnages and additional revenue for the county for that site. And we have the capacity to do that, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. Environmental compliance achievements. Another thing we told David and Richard is that we wanted to reduce number of monitoring wells, reduce stormwater sampling, reduce laboratory costs. All of that has been accomplished in the last 24 months out there. So a significant reduction. I think the number is probably about 25% of the monitoring wells that they've eliminated and reduced. So you're still in compliance, but you're saving money on that environmental compliance cost. Next to last thing, semi-annual compaction measurements. So we go out there now, every 6 months, we fly over the site with the drone, we measure compaction, okay? And we shoot for that target of 1,500 pounds per cubic yard. And so we've got some real live data every 6 months that we can sit down with Ronald and say, okay, we hit it, we didn't hit it, why not? What can we change? So twice a year, and I think that's a good frequency for the size site that you all have going on. And then the last thing is semi-annual operator training. I've been conducting training myself with Ronald and his staff on how do we run a site that is, number one, safe, a safe operation. Number two, it's in regulatory compliance. And number three, how to make money, how to run cost effectively. And those are the three goals that I've kind of trained and will continue to train your guys on. And that's how to do those three things. So we've had, I think, 3 training classes in the last year and a half. So, any questions on what I call the operations side of the land?
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Joyce, I want to tell you thank you, because that's some of the best information I've heard in a while, okay? Real good information. Hats off to the county administrator and the assistant county administrator, the colonel. But that's some of the best information I've heard in a while. And the other thing is this, because we're creating an asset out there, but the 100 pounds, what would it take the colonel with a couple of boxes of chicken to stand out there or whatever, kind of back that down a little bit? What would it take just to squeeze that extra 100 pounds in, if I may ask?
What is an incentive?
Barrel.
No, I went in, I hold from your barrel.
Water is an incentive. We don't want to put more water out there.
Okay.
We're working on it.
Okay.
Trust me.
Okay, I believe that.
One of the things we want to talk about possibly is a different compactor. If we get into a situation where we're increasing that tonnage, we're going to talk about that. So we're going to get that 1,500 pounds.
Maybe you could stand out there with me, so.
There you go.
How does a drone
That was a drone that, yeah.
Does it shoot
All right,
lasers?
so this is real simple. Let me explain. So a drone flies over, takes a picture. All right, 6 months ago, it flew over and took a picture. Let's say it took a picture of this floor 6 months ago. We fly over today, we take a picture. What's the elevation change from this floor to the top of this table? That's a change in elevation. That's volume. Okay, a change in volume. Then we go back to the scale house and say, how many tons or pounds of waste did we put into that volume?
I see.
So it's a measurement of weight divided
Doing the math.
by volume. Right, that's all it is. That's density. And that's an absolute critical, one of the most critical measurements when you're running. I used to own and run landfills, so that's what we measure is in-place density, most critical thing. So that's the way we do it. Okay, it's a survey, that's all it is, and tonnage. So, great. But we're gonna work on 50.
Great.
Any more questions for Mr. Joyce? Thank you, Mr.
I got one more slide.
Okay.
Mr. Warren, excuse me. Next slide, all right, landfill expansion. Ronald, Richard has asked me, and David, what's the projected life? All right, so let me go to this next slide here real quick, and I'll show you something, if everybody can see that. All right, that kind of brown area in the center of your slide is phase 2 of the landfill. And phase 2 is divided into 3 cells, A, B, and C, okay? So A is at the top, you see that semicircle, the oval up at the top, that's the leachate pond. Then you come down, does this thing have a pointer? Oh, there we go, cool. All right, so this is A. This is cell A right here, all right? Cell B is right here, and cell C is right here. This is phase 2. Phase 1's over here, and we're going to talk about phase 3, which is over there. All right, so this is nearly full. Y'all been in there since I think about 2011. This, I am projecting, if you all get your tonnage up to where we want it to be, starting next year, this is going to have about 2 to 2.5 years of life remaining in it, okay? So we got a short fuse to get a permit and then build. The next thing we want to do is get this permit, and we want to build this phase C or cell C, and we want to combine that. We're going to modify your existing permit. We're going to modify it to pick up all of this space right in here, phase 3. It's about 50 to 60 acres. And it's probably going to give you, I'm guessing, I'm going to say conservatively, 15 years of life out here, okay? Depends on how much tonnage you put in there, all right, what your intake of tonnage is. So anyway, that's where we're working right now, is expansion into the cell C and expansion into the phase 3 area. That's what all right, so in the next 24 months, 24, I said 2.25 years, January of 2023, we need to have this cell built right here, okay? So that's what we're doing, yes. So in the next little over 2 years, we got a lot of work to do. And you all authorized us to start all that at the last board meeting, and we're already flying over the site. We're going to have it flown this week. We're setting up a meeting with DEQ to figure out all the computer stuff. So we're moving forward on that right now as we speak. We had a site meeting out there this morning with Ronald and Chris and one of our other engineers, and we drove all around the site and we talked about how it's going to be designed and where and all that kind of stuff, all the details. So let me go back real quick. Let's see. Expansions, 2C and 3, we talked about maximize disposal. All right, so one of the things we're going to do is we're going to probably lower the elevations in that next phase there, because we want to maximize the volume of your landfill, maximize the life of your landfill. That's what our job is maximize that. So we've got a permitting process we've got to go through. We say here permits, we've got to get them in less than 2 years, and then we've got to be in construction that last half of 2022 is where we got to be in construction for this cell. So yeah, that's kind of where we are as far as the landfill. One more thing, and I'll be quiet. But this picture right here is kind of an aerial of your entire facility out there. Okay, so here's what Ronald and Richard and David and I have talked about. All right, again, old landfill right over here. You've driven out there, you got a mound, a mound, a mound, a mound, and a mound. You got a bunch of mounds out there. Okay, in what we call phase 1. Power line right of way here, gas line right of way here. Phase 2, right here in the middle. What we're going to do is we're going to tie all that boundary line right there, right back down to the gas line, and we're going to what we call piggyback on top of phase 2. There's a big valley, there's a big stormwater pond right there. We're going to fill that valley, and we're going to maximize. That's how we're going to get 15 years of life out of this area over here. Then where do we go next? Well, you've got this area of what's called phase 4. Well, I'm not recommending we go to phase 4. What I recommend 20 years from now is we go back over here and we fill on top of all these mounds. You got a whole lot of airspace. You got a lot of capacity and volume over there that needs to be utilized before you go over here to start disturbing virgin ground on the south side of that site. So that's long term, that's 15 years ago. Huh?
Got 35 years on left of the gas line.
35, you talking about, oh, sorry.
15 up there, and you say 20 more on top, or is it just?
No, I'm saying this right in here, I'm guessing you're 15 to 20 years at a higher tonnage than you're bringing right now. That's about 175,000 tons a year. Right now, you're bringing in about 130,000 tons a year, so. Yes, sir.
Speaking of airspace, how far up can you go?
High as you want to, as high as the geometry will allow us, okay? One of the beauties of this site, you don't have any height restrictions because you don't have any airports nearby. The airports are creating height restrictions from the FAA. So basically what we do is we go as deep as we can, based on bedrock and groundwater, deep as we can, and then we go as high as we can based on geometry of 3 to 1 or 33% side slopes. That's what we designed for, as high as we get that. Okay?
Any other questions for Mr. Joyce? Thank you.
Great.
Very important.
Thank you, guys. Okay. Thank you.
All right, we have the convenience center improvement update. Mr. Moore.
Okay, the purpose of this brief is to inform you guys of the current and future efforts to improve the collection sites. Not it? The one that I gave on the thumb drive earlier? That's it. Okay, yeah, the areas I want to talk about, fall under 3 categories: communications, site supervision, site management. Starting with communications, we're going to look at the signage on each of the sites to promote awareness and increase the likelihood that our citizens are going to read them. The number of signs per site we're looking to reduce, and the signs that remain will be maintained, redesigned to increase clarity and understanding, and strategically located to maximize visibility. Currently, we have a whole hodgepodge of signs on each site. Way too many for any one person to sit down and read at any time. So currently, sites have anywhere from 4 to 9 signs scattered about. Each sign has a specific message and one that needs to be relayed to the citizens. However, we're looking at consolidating them into maybe bigger, more attractive signs. Maybe it would encourage the citizens to slow down and read one sign versus 9 or 10. And increase the site, the way it works. This is the sign that's currently in design. 2 separate, the same sign I got on the left hand right here. Perhaps we're thinking that the citizens will be inclined to read one sign versus multiple signs. We're still going to maintain a few of the smaller signs across the site, but we're going to reduce the number drastically. We need to face the truth that some people are not going to read the signs, period, no matter how well they look or how few we have. So the thought here is this is going to be the new sign to place at the entrance. It's going to provide the citizen the most immediate information they need to know about where they're at. The site location, the address, in case there's an incident, they can call and say, I'm at such and such address. Shows the hours of operation, and then it shows the 2 closest sites that are near. That way, if they pull up, the site's closed, they can look on the sign, find an address to the nearest site. The distances are there, 3.6 miles to Blair's, 5.4 to Powell. So that gives them a choice. Down at the bottom has information for the landfill itself, the numbers, the phone numbers, and our operations. And at the bottom is pretty much our catch-all violation: no commercial, business, contractors, dumping, no brush, no tires, etc. It covers the whole gamut there at the bottom. so that people know everything right up front. The sign over to the other side there, demonstrates this, it's a modular sign that we're gonna be able to place on that gate, the entrance sign, to say that this site is closed temporarily. Now, understand this is still in the edit phase, so some of the verbiage is gonna change in the final review. I've already submitted that. Some of these, blocks with the red around, those are items that are being stricken from the signs. We decided to remove that information from the signs. So this is not how it's gonna look in the end, but it's pretty darn close.
Mr. Moore, what would the site be closed for?
If it's, we have maintenance or the COVID-19 issue we had this year, or maybe snowed in, or any number of reasons, that's why we're gonna, the site closed sign is being changed, so it's not gonna be due to unexpected repairs, we're leaving that part off. The way it's gonna read is this site is temporarily closed until further notice,
Giving them options.
giving us options, so we can close it for any number of reasons. We don't have to have-
Including being full. We've had a few times where we've had to close
That's right.
rates because it's full.
Packed out and open tops are full. We ask our guys to close them down. They can close it, pop the sign up, and the citizen has guidance to the next site. Okay, we're updating some of the existing signs. The A and the B signs was a good idea. They're placed on the wall in front of the compactor and the open tops. Basically gives the citizen a description of the items that they can throw in there. We were finding that the original was a little confusing, so we decided to go with some pictures and add a little bit more detail to it. I believe these are a little bit more attractive. I've actually seen people come on the site and say, well, look at the pretty sign, and just draw their attention to it. So that's what we're hoping, is to make them a little more attractive, to draw their attention, and a little bit more informative for someone. Give them pictures and words, so the auditory and visual learners, so we try to capture all of it. Textile. And the other part of communications we're looking to upgrade is communication between the sites. Currently, there's no communication between the sites unless you happen to have friends on each site talking to each other. What we're wanting to do is connect the sites via telephone, which is a voice over IP phone that's installed at each site. The cost is only the purchase of the phone. We've already got the networks installed, so they're going to run off of our IP camera network. So all you gotta do is plug it in, program the system, and now the convenience center can call down the road and say, hey, I'm about packed out. Do you have any room? I got somebody down here that needs to dump, and they can send them their way. Now, this is primarily going to be most effective at our manned sites, but we will have them at the unmanned sites as well. So in the future, our plan is, right now, the existing plan is for the sites to be able to communicate between each other. In the future, if we can get it worked out, we may actually post numbers to these sites so that the citizens can call from home before they drive. Or they can set at the gate, say that it's closed, they can look at the number for the next site call. So that's in the work for down the road.
My only question is, does it have 911 capability?
Yes, they can call outside the network. Anyone with the number can call into it through the switchboard, and they can dial directly to each site just by the 4-digit code that we have, extensions.
And those numbers would be great for our county user app. Go back one slide. Phone numbers, just one more. Down at the bottom.
Oh, the phone number there is to the landfill.
Okay.
We had originally thought that we were gonna put the phone number on here for these sites,
That's what I was thinking.
but it's a monster program into the switchboard tier, so we're gonna put that as a future plan. That's why we're not putting the numbers on the side at this moment.
Gotcha.
Now, in the design, we are gonna leave space, so that if we decide to put the numbers on later, we can just take a little sticky and stick it right on there.
Okay.
Customer engagement. Customer focus and engagement is being re-emphasized as part of our core competencies. Sitting in the building and passively watching is no longer acceptable. Our existing attendants and new hires are being trained or retrained as needed to actively engage with our citizens. It's an expectation for the attendants to engage citizens, as it's written in their duty description. It says, assist county citizens on proper use of facilities and disposal of items. So we're holding their feet to the fire for that. They are to help where needed and provide guidance to the proper uses of each site. So they're going to be held accountable. Every 6 months they're given an evaluation, and during that period we'll talk about what they've done right, what they could improve on, and hopefully this will be it'll improve over time. As the site supervisors for land sites, we're actually going to start using them for what they're positioned for. It's not just a title. Okay, each man site has an operator with a position title. And we're talking the 5-man sites, not the unmanned sites. They have the title of site supervisor. Okay, they're going to be expected to be being held accountable for doing more than just holding the title. They're going to ensure that their site is properly manned during each shift. The time tracking is accurately reported on the timesheets. Training and counseling provided for their site attendants, and provide input when it's time for us to make their evaluations on their subordinates. They're going to be receiving training directly from either myself or Mike Waller, and being mentored over a period of time to make sure that they get the training and attention they need to be a good supervisor. Site management, second part of this. Site cleanliness is very important for us. So with the addition of the convenience center coordinator, which to me, the solid waste department is better able to maintain site cleanliness through direct supervision. This is where it comes down to me being able to supervise and mentor the site attendants. I can spend a little bit more time out there and see what's going on. And one of the things we're dealing with right now, the attendants have gotten accustomed to little or no direct supervision, leading some to be negligent in their duties to maintain whole site cleanliness. Okay, the new emphasis is being placed on keeping the entire site clean and not just the pads up front. If you were to go down to, let's say, Gretna, right now, go behind and look at the compactor, it's a holy mess. You go over to Smith Mountain, which we recently remanned and upgraded, that site is spotless, all right? So we're trying to do that site by site. As I can get around to it, as Mike Waller can, we're working with the site attendants, training them, helping them get the initial cleanup. We're looking at 5, 10, sometimes 20 years of mess underneath these things that they have not dealt with. So up at Smith Mountain, just to give you an instance, I got 9 tractor loads of trash out from underneath the compactor. I'm just around the outside of it. All right, so now that's clean. And it's going to stay that way because our operators are being held accountable for it. And it's easy. You walk down 5 minutes, pick up a few trash, and it's done. So the initial effort, 3 or 4 or 5 hours in our buckets, and we're going. So that's an effort we're doing site by site. So hopefully it'll come to a site near you soon. This is Smith Mountain. Okay, went from the left to the right, and now we're expecting them to keep it that way. So with proper supervision, motivation, supplies, and training, the sites will transform. Building grounds and upkeep. Many of our convenience centers need repairs. Mechanical and structural components are starting to fail. These things are getting old, they're starting to rust out. Here's just a few examples. The picture on the left shows the hopper where it's rusting out. Some of these hoppers have gotten so rusted along those hinges that they've actually fallen off in operation. They haven't hurt anybody because it's still got the hydraulic arms attached to them, but the hinges come unhinged and it falls off. So we got to get maintenance out there to fix it, and hopefully through our initiatives of site cleanliness and as we can prevent these kind of failures from happening. So we're trying to be a little bit more proactive than reactive. And this picture on the right is a compactor box moving in and out. So over many years, it's wore about a 3 to 4 inch groove into the concrete. It's down to the rebar. I think if the rebar hadn't been there, it would have went deeper. So we're having to go back through there with maintenance. By the way, this is what these holes collect. You can't really see the colors in this, but if you see a good screen, you'll see orange, red, blue, a bunch of yucky stuff in here. This is a breeding ground for disease and bacteria, and it also presents a very offensive odor, one that people, this is at Mount Cross. People pull from Mount Cross, this is what they smell. All right, what they did smell. So these cavities collect water, contaminants, and may sit for days, weeks. It has nowhere else to go, it can't run off. So what we're doing is we're contracting these to be repaired. They're filled with concrete, they're capped with metal. Now the level is, the grade is leveled back out, so now that the water can wash back off, now we can start focusing on drainage out in the soil where it needs to go, and the boxes can align as they intended to. So slowly we're taking care of this too. We've done Mount Herman, or Berry Hill, Mount Cross, working on Gretna, and we got a couple others around that we're trying to get this work done too. Other efforts, repairing the fences. Not only are these a safety issue, because any wall that's less than 3 foot, I believe, is a safety hazard to people leaning over and falling. So a lot of these fences are necessary, and some of them haven't been replaced since the place was built. We got fences that are falling down, some that's just look old and cruddy. So I'm going through with our team, and this is before and after to do the fence repair. So not only is it safer, it looks a lot better to the citizens. So we've got a lot of compliments from the people coming in saying, I'm glad our money's going to good use. And in some areas, this is one of the areas. So they appreciate the upgrades.
What are you doing, when you, I see the before and after picture, but are you doing anything to preserve the wood that is there? It's gonna turn gray just like the left.
That's right, yeah, it will. Yeah. Eventually, once I get the base foundations, the fences replaced,
Yes, sir.
I will probably keep something on my truck as a stain or a preservative
Yeah.
that I can put in a spray bottle, walk around, pump it, and spray it maybe once a year. I mean, that won't take much at all. The maintenance of it, once it's up, is not that.
That's right.
So that is in the plan.
Thank you.
All right, some other things we're trying to do is some of the sites, most of the sites don't have water, there's only flares, and we just installed a hydrant in Mount Herman. And to give us a test ground at Mount Cross, I installed this water tank here. It collects rainwater, will fill up over time. It has a little spout on the bottom, an electric pump and a hose, and they can spray down the site, clean up the pad, keep some of the stinky stuff washed down. So hopefully, if this works out here, we can move this initiative across to other sites. And this costs roughly just less than $500, so it's not that much. These barrels we actually get from the landfill. We get our diesel engine fluid, it's DEF fluid in here, it's biodegradable, it's environmentally friendly. So once they empty the container, we rinse it out, clean it up, pop it out on the site, spend a couple $100 on some leveling, installing gutters, and we're good to go. So we can get water to the sites that don't have direct plumbing.
So we start off with a full.
I did on this one. Now, that brings me up to a point that I really didn't capture in here, but since we merged with Public Works, we've gotten access to some of their tools, some of the cool toys. And one of them is a jetter. All right, this thing will pump out some water at very high pressure, high volume, it's 750 gallons. The day that we did the work on the pad to clean it up and patch it, I had some water left over after our pressure wash I took, and I did about 3/4 full. I didn't want to fill it all in because I wanted to see how the rain volume would raise during the storm. So after this weekend, with all the rain coming in, I want to go back out and visit the site and make sure it's going well. But so far, the site attendants say it's catching a lot of water. It's going to probably meet their needs. And if I have to, I'll take some out there every once in a while with that jetter, and I go around and do my inspections on the sites. I want to use this jetter to wash things down so I can look at it, so I can put the excess in there.
That's good creative thinking right there. Very good. You got any other ideas?
Working on it. I'm trying to fit out these other fires first. As I'm going around, I'm trying to think about how I can improve it for not just our tenants, but our citizens. And I'm trying to sit with our citizens when they come in, ask them, hey, what do you think about the site? Is there anything that you can think of that we can do to improve it? And if it's within my means and approved, then I'll try to push it and do it. we're trying to meet the needs of the citizens as much as we can.
It's called attaboy in the Navy, so I appreciate
It's
it.
called excellent severe.
I'm an Air Force guy, so.
Schools and sections.
We're already over, so.
Yep, I'm done. This is the last one here, so if you have any questions, this is our last slide.
Very informative. Any questions from the members of the committee? Questions from board members?
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Hackett.
Good work, thank you, sir.
Recycling efforts, Mr. Hicks. We're already over, so.
Slide through. As of right now, we've got sort of a mixed bag for recycling. Just about all sites, we do have aluminum cans and newspaper. At some of the sites, we do cardboard, and at a couple of sites, we're currently doing plastics. And our goal is to move to where all of the sites offer the same activities. In there, Kevin? There are, at some sites, we have the old 8-yard boxes. Some are red, some are green. And back 2 years ago, we decided to get out of the front load business. So we can't pick those boxes up anymore. That's where most of our cans are in. We've got some newspapers in those small boxes. And those are picked up by First Piedmont. And for the sites that we have cardboard, they're picked up by First Piedmont. And the cans that we can't pick up, they pick up those for aluminum cans and newspapers and recycling. We're spending in the neighborhood of about $30,000 to $35,000 a year on that contract. What we're proposing to do is to buy some additional long boxes. And there'll be 2 separate compartments in each box. So at each site, we'll have cardboard, newspapers, aluminum cans, plastics that will be the same at all 21 sites. And there are markets for all 4 of those. And we think those markets will stay strong, especially cans and cardboard. And I think newspaper, they say fairly strong. You're not gonna make any money on it, but, the citizens want recycling and we can, at least dispose of those items.
Do you think it would pay for itself? Does,
Right. The biggest thing is our staff using our trucks to pick up all of our recycling boxes once we're finished. So that's gonna save us about $30,000 to $35,000 a year on that contract price. Our
still a price for us to
cost
have.
on those boxes are about $130,000, so it's about a $3 grand to get paid back.
That's what I'm getting at.
Boxes.
Got it.
And, at your next meeting, you'll actually have a bid proposal on those additional boxes. So if we want to purchase those boxes, we've actually got, some boxes of our own that like use papers, and we'll take those same boxes, we'll split each box into 2 separate compartments. And we'll repaint those boxes to match the new boxes, so, all of the boxes will look the same, and we'll have the same service at all sites. And we'll also pour concrete pads for those boxes. If you go to a site now, your box may be sitting on dirt, on the grass. And we want it all the sites, all with the same service, all the boxes look the same. And you got a nice, concrete area you walk on, which is supposed to be recycling there. So, that's our plan for next year. And I'm trying to answer any questions anybody's got, but you still have that bid coming up at your October.
Okay, first, any questions from committee members? Any questions from board members? Thank you, Mr.
It's very difficult this time, your markets are not very good. We're thinking once we bring the cardboard back in the house, I think we can make money on that. The aluminum cans is a good market, but our citizens, kind of have a bad habit of throwing cardboard in with boxes, plastic bags and everything else. If it's not completely clean, you get a significantly reduced cost of the recycling.
So we basically just,
It's a service that's, that is ultimately the cost of the county, but your citizens ask for it all the time. They want us to, be able to do, the cardboard, the aluminum cans, the plastic, the newspapers. Glass is just about completely falling off the radar. If it's broken, they won't take it, it's just got trash in it. Take it, so they, I don't see us offering glass, not at all in the future. So, basically, there's 4 items.
any other questions from anybody? Thank you, Mr. Hicks. We're down to 5E, yard waste tipping fee, temporary abatement decision. Mr. Skaggs.
Well, he's probably already answered that. I mean, you go through this kind of answers that they're not using yard waste for anything for compaction because of its material. So I was just asked by a citizen if we could waive those fees at least once a year for people to get rid of yard waste, but there's no way for us to compact it. Does that make any sense to do that?
We gotta grind it up, and that's a cost to us, so if you bring more yard waste, that's just more cost. Cost us this $30. If you make them bring it across the scale, we got to pay for it. It's reduced income.
Well, we've done that in situations where there's a storm and stuff, but it's just arbitrary to do it.
Like major outlets.
Anybody got any more questions about that? Okay. Are there other matters from the committee members?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dudley, Mr. Davis. I see no other business to come before this committee tonight. I declare the meeting adjourned.